here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
American voters are making big decisions about our nation. As the midterm elections grow closer, the CBS News political team brings understanding of what's at stake. America Decides, streaming tonight at 9 on the CBS News app.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Killian coming to you from our Washington, D.C. bureau. It's good to be with you. Thanks for joining us. Here's a look at some of the stories we're watching right now. It's primary day with voters in Florida, New York, and Oklahoma choosing who will be on the ballot for November's midterm elections. The results in all three states could have major implications for both parties. We've got reporters on the ground to break down the key matchups. And a federal jury convicts two men of conspiring to kidnap Democratic Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer in 2020. Adam Fox and Barry Croft face a maximum sentence of life in prison. The pair were also convicted of one count of conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction. Plus, the National Archives reveals it has identified more than 100 documents of classified material from its initial review of White House records collected from former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence earlier this year. Our Robert Costa is in West Palm Beach, Florida, with the latest. Plus, the U.S. urges Americans to leave Ukraine immediately over fears of renewed Russian attacks. The latest warnings from the federal government ahead of Ukraine's Independence Day. And later this hour, Twitter's former security head alleges the social media platform has major security flaws. We'll hear from his attorney, who explains why other internet users should be aware of the online risks. But first, we begin tonight with voters heading to the polls for key races in 3 states. The outcome of these races will be shaped in terms of the future of both parties heading into the midterms. Voters are casting ballots in New York, Florida, and Oklahoma. The Empire State is holding its second set of primary races this summer. And in Florida, voters will decide which Democrat will take on Florida Governor Ron Desantis in the fall. In New York, Democrat Pat Ryan is facing off against Republican Mark Molinero in a special election in the state's 19th congressional district. They're running to fill Antonio Delgado's seat, who left to become New York's lieutenant governor. Ulster County executive and Democratic candidate for Congress Pat Ryan joins us now. And a note that we did reach out to his challenger, Mark Molinero, but he was unable to join us on Red and Blue. Thanks so much for joining us, Pat. You have centered your campaign around the issue of abortion. What has your message been?
Thanks for having me, Nicole. Look, fundamental rights and freedoms in our country are under threat. Front and center has been the direct assault on reproductive rights, women's access to safe abortions, and we have certainly made that a central part of this campaign, along with standing up and fighting for working families that are feeling tremendous economic pain and pressure right now. And our campaign is about the fact that we can and have to do both.
I know a lot of people are looking at this special election in the wake of Kansas and what happened there. Why do you think this issue of abortion in particular has resonated in this particular race?
Well, I'm a proud West Point graduate. I served this country in combat, and I feel like I think a lot of Americans, this is a fundamental right and freedom. And when that is ripped away from people, they stand up across party. And we saw that certainly in Kansas, and we have felt that same energy, that same mobilization across 11 counties in this very large congressional district. And that has really fired up the momentum in our campaign. And we're feeling really good now down the home stretch. I was out today, and the energy is palpable at the doors, and people are really coming out to vote.
And your race is being talked about as a potential bellwether for how Democrats might fare in the midterms. How do you see this race?
Well, I'm certainly not a political pundit or expert. I'm a guy who grew up in this district. graduated high school here, graduated West Point here, raising my family here. And so for me, this is about, we've got to stand up and fight for the community that's always had my back. And that's really what we're doing here. And then we'll let smarter folks than I determine what that means for the broader country.
And if you're successful tonight and eventually, potentially in November, what do you hope to bring here to Washington?
I mean, number one, we just have to deliver. We have to provide relief to families right now. The first day I showed up at West Point, I was taught there are 3 acceptable answers to any question: yes, no, and no excuse. And everybody across the country, across this district, feels like we're just getting a bunch of excuses and not getting the help that we need. We have started to see that really change and improve, especially with the CHIPS Act, with Inflation Reduction Act, with PACT Act. We are delivering for folks at the federal level, and I want to continue that work, continue that momentum, and provide relief to folks while we stand up for their fundamental rights and freedoms, working to codify the protections of Roe at the federal level.
All right, congressional candidate Pat Ryan, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thanks, Nicole.
Another race involves 2 political giants facing off for the nomination to represent part of New York City, but only one can prevail. And it's been an unorthodox and divisive fight to the finish. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane is in Manhattan for the battle of the Democratic nomination for New York's 12th congressional seat. Scott, what's happening in the home stretch of this campaign?
Hey, Nicole, good to be with you from Manhattan. Both leading candidates in this New York 12th race, Jerry Nadler, the Judiciary Committee chairman in the U.S. House, a 30-year veteran of the U.S. House, is battling his 30-year colleague, the chair of the Oversight Committee, Carolyn Maloney. During the home stretch, they're trying to gin out turnout in what's likely to be a very low turnout primary election. It's not lost on anybody here that this is peak vacation season, and the voters they need to turn out here in New York are, in some large number likely, not in New York. They're on vacation. We caught up with Jerry Nadler as he was canvassing late this morning. Here's what he said is likely to be lost or certain to be lost after the primary tonight.
Well, we're certainly losing clout. I mean, when you have 2 committee chairs and one can't go back, of course, the city and state a lot of clout. And the fact that we're going to lose because of this reapportionment, 1 committee chairmanship, is very unfortunate for New York. To lose 2 would be catastrophic.
We'll note we saw Jerry Nadler keeping a very open, very public schedule with publicly announced stops. Carolyn Maloney did not have a series of publicly announced stops or media availabilities today. But in a rally with supporters earlier this week, she was expressing optimism. Take a listen.
As the eyes of the city, and I would say the nation, the whole nation is watching this election.
Right.
On New York's 12th congressional district.
Right.
Onward to victory.
Right.
2 other candidates fighting for this nomination, but no matter who wins, the Democrat who wins the nomination is almost certain to win the general election, and one of these 2 institutions of the U.S. House is certain to be done representing the New York 12th, Nicole.
Well, or at least for now. This is, of course, as you know, Scott, a redrawn district, and a unique one at that. Explain what's changing.
Yeah, this is so different than so many other primaries and redistricting maps we've seen around the country. You go to Wyoming, you go to Alaska, you have 1 U.S. House member representing the entire state. Go to Pennsylvania, Texas, New Mexico, and these members of the U.S. House represent districts that are hundreds, if not thousands, of square miles wide. This district has drawn the Upper West Side along with the Upper East Side of Manhattan, 2 worlds that are not necessarily figuratively close, even though they're geographically close. We spoke with some of the voters earlier today about that.
It makes it very difficult. I feel badly for the people running more than us, but you know, I don't know. I don't like that they did it, but here we are and we have to choose.
I think that there are different interests on the east side and west side. The population is very different, and you know, and both of us have had these representatives forever, and to take 2 really good people and make us choose, I think is hard.
New York's lengthy, painful, divisive redistricting consumed much of this year and redrew the map statewide. This is just one example of what members, incumbents in the U.S. House say is a very unfortunate redraw of the map for Democrats in New York.
And Congressman Nadler also talked about his party's prospects in other races. What did he have to say there?
Yeah, I wanted to press him about that, so we did, because there is a special election to the north. We've talked about earlier on the program, the New York 19th district, where you have a Democrat and Republican facing off in a special election, the first real close special election after the High Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. Jerry Nadler says he's optimistic about that race and Democrats getting new momentum before November. Take a listen to that.
The abortion issue is motivating Democrats and motivating pro-choice voters tremendously. And that leads me to suspect that you're going to have a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of turnout for Democrats in November, unlike the usual situation in the midterm. And that's why I'm optimistic.
Nicole, we could get our first read on whether he should be optimistic and whether there'll be more optimism in the next 77 days before the midterm elections after tonight's results come in.
Yeah, well, a lot of fascinating dynamics to watch tonight. Scott McFarlane, thanks so much. Voters are also heading to the polls in Oklahoma to cast ballots in a Republican Senate primary runoff. Oklahoma Congressman Markwayne Mullins faces off against a former Speaker of the House, T.W. Shannon. They are both looking to replace retiring Republican Senator Jim Inhofe. Mullin has the endorsement of former President Trump. The winner of Tuesday's runoff is expected to win in November, as Oklahoma has not elected a Democrat to the Senate in more than 3 decades. And CBS News primary election coverage continues tonight with our John Dickerson hosting a special at 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll be joining you along with teams in D.C. and on the ground in New York and Florida to break down the latest on the key races. You can stream that right here on CBS News. More information is coming to light involving the FBI search of former President Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago. Robert Costa joins us from West Palm Beach with what revelations we're learning and where the investigation stands now. Plus, a whistleblower is coming forward about business practices, about Twitter, what he's alleging, and what the company is saying in response. You're streaming Red and Blue.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices. What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging wind.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
people from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it. We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
The National Archives has found more than 100 classified documents after its initial review of the 15 boxes of White House records collected from former President Trump's residence in January. That's according to a May 10th letter the archives sent to a Trump lawyer. At the time it was written, the National Archives was preparing to grant the FBI access to those records, but Trump's team was trying to delay an investigation into more than 700 pages of records based on a, quote, protective assertion of executive privilege. I want to bring in CBS News Chief Election and Campaign Correspondent Robert Costa, who is in West Palm Beach, Florida. Bob, what more can you tell us about what the letter shows and why does it matter?
Good to be with you, Nicole. This letter is an important development in the ongoing story and investigation of former President Trump's handling of classified material now under federal investigation. Because this shows for the first time in writing the alarm inside the National Archives earlier this year as they tried to secure documents that they knew were special access programs, top secret, classified documents in the possession of former President Trump at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida, just behind me here across the water. And so they sent a letter on May 10th, 2022 to Trump's top lawyer dealing with this case, and they said to him, we need to have this material as soon as possible. You need to work with us. This is very sensitive material with national security implications. And this letter is part of the timeline. And so we're piecing together the puzzle in this investigation day by day, it seems now, as we report this story. So now we know in May, this letter was sent from the National Archives to the Trump team. And then just a month later, less than a month later, in early June, federal investigators arrived at Mar-a-Lago to have a meeting with Trump's lawyers to figure out what they had in their possession. They took some documents out. And then come early August, there was that FBI search.
How serious are the revelations from this letter?
Just a few moments ago, I spoke with former CIA Deputy Director Mike Morrell, and he said that this is gravely serious when it comes to national security. If former President Trump was in possession of so-called special access programs, top secret material in a facility like Mar-a-Lago that may be secure in terms of security with Secret Service protection, but doesn't have the kind of usual protection that surrounds intelligence material. They call them SCIFs. These are secure facilities, government facilities that are used particularly for intelligence matters. And because that wasn't part of the Mar-a-Lago property in 2021, 2022, Mr. Morrell told CBS News that this presented a possible vulnerability for the United States government in the sense that foreign agents, foreign actors, should they be aware of what's being stored at Mar-a-Lago, might be able to find access to the property. It is a club. People can have membership to, and they could, as members of that club or visitors to that club, somehow find their way to this special access material, top secret material.
So where does this investigation stand?
This investigation remains fluid. It's ongoing, and it's a legal battle in the sense that this week, former President Trump's lawyers filed a motion to try to request an independent arbiter, a so-called special master or neutral party, to review and return the evidence collected during the FBI search earlier this month. But the Justice Department is being pretty quiet about where this all stands. They know they're in dialogue and engagement with the Trump side, but this is an investigation that continues. We know they're talking to witnesses, conducting depositions, trying to figure out more about who had access to Mar-a-Lago and what might have happened to these documents. For example, CBS News has learned that the federal government is looking over video surveillance they acquired through a subpoena earlier this year to try to figure out who's standing outside the hallway where all of these documents were being held, to see if there was a vulnerability to a possible entry by an actor with ill intentions or a foreign agent.
And you talked about DOJ, but what's next on the Trump legal front?
The Trump legal front is sprawling. He has a lot of political support in the party, but when you look at his legal challenges, he's facing not only the federal investigation here in Florida about his use of documents, about classified material, he's facing a Fulton County, Georgia grand jury investigation of his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. He's facing a January 6th committee on Capitol Hill, which continues to conduct interviews even this week. And he's facing legal scrutiny in New York from the Manhattan District Attorney and the New York State Attorney General. And so when you talk to top Republicans, they say they feel good about the midterm elections, but there's a lot of uncertainty in the air. Where does this all go? Senate Republican leader, the minority leader, Mitch McConnell, said today when asked for comment about all of this, he said he's watching it, it's unfolding, and he didn't come out with a firm statement or assessment. And that's really the sense I pick up among Republican strategists and operatives, that they just don't know where this all goes politically because the legal question is so up in the air.
Robert Costa, we know you're going to stay on top of it, and we'll continue to have you back on. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
For more on Florida's primaries, Finn Gomez joins us now from Hialeah, Florida. He is CBS News' political director. Finn, you're there in Hialeah where Governor Desantis and Senator Rubio are set to appear. Why are they appearing together there?
Republicans, Marco Rubio, who is the senator incumbent who's running for re-election, and the incumbent Republican governor, Ron DeSantis, are here in Hialeah, Florida, which is just outside of Miami, Florida. They're kicking off a tour of rallies across the state. They're going to 3 stops tomorrow as well. But this one specifically is about focusing on the Latino Hispanic vote that is so important and very important voting bloc here in the Sunshine State. But both are running unopposed in their primaries, but they do face Democratic competition in the general election with Val Demings, Congresswoman Val Demings, who's facing Marco Rubio in the general election, and also Nikki Fried, the agricultural commissioner in the state, who's running against Charlie Crist. In the primary tonight, that whoever comes out the victor in that primary will face Ron DeSantis in the general election.
And what might that general election matchup look like, depending on who wins?
Yeah, and that's the thing, Nicole. If you look at the Democratic primary for governor, you have Nikki Fried, who I mentioned was the agricultural commissioner, and Charlie Crist, the Democratic congressman, former Republican governor, who then became an independent and then now a Democrat. They're facing each other. It has been a pretty close race for most of their campaign leading up until today, Election Day. Charlie Crist, however, has pretty much been leading in most of the polls. There is a recent poll that came out just today, the St. Pete polls, that show Charlie Crist with a double-digit lead over Fried. Crist is running as more of a centrist, moderate Biden Democrat, if you will, while Nikki Fried was someone who was considered the new hope of the Florida Democratic Party and has captured more of the progressive wing in this state. However, Charlie Crist, I spoke to some Florida political experts just before this hit, who say Charlie Crist has this name ID. He's run for statewide offices multiple times, governor, attorney general, and of course Senate, and now again running for governor. So his name ID is so significant that it could be too much of an uphill climb for Fried to overcome that, but we will know who will go on to be the victor and who will face Governor DeSantis.
You mentioned earlier that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis may be making some more stops with Senator Rubio in Florida, but he's also, as you know, been spending a lot of time out of the state stumping for other GOP candidates. Right. What do we know about DeSantis's presidential aspirations?
Well, absolutely. Again, speaking to Florida Republicans, they say it's really no secret that Desantis is eyeing a potential 2024 White House bid. As you mentioned, Nicole, he went to Arizona. He went to Ohio and Pennsylvania recently just to campaign for candidates in those Republican candidates in those battleground states. Of course, Nicole, those three states are also battleground states in the 2024 primary calendar. So there could be an underlying reason why he's going to these states. And of course, he's amassed a huge war chest of over about $130 million campaign chest that he hasn't really utilized. So all eyes are on him if he decides to run. He is someone who is seen as a potential leader in the Republican Party. And of course, there is another Florida man that he might have competition with, and that, of course, is former President Donald Trump, who is a Florida resident and who is also potentially eyeing a potential 2024 run as well.
And getting back to Senator Rubio, Florida Congresswoman Val Demings is seeking the Democratic nomination to challenge him for that Senate seat come this fall. Is that a flippable seat?
Democrats certainly hope so. Demings has actually run a formidable campaign. She's raised a ton of money. A lot of that's come from out of state, but she's also been focused on law and order. She has a law enforcement background, and that, if you look at her ads that are running in the state, there's no mention of her being a Democrat, and it's all focused on law and order. So that strategy has actually perhaps made this race somewhat competitive. If you look at some of the recent polls, it shows a tightening race against Marco Rubio. And I was talking to some Republican officials in Washington who believe that because of the potential for this race to be tightened, this general election race to be tightened between Demings and Rubio, they could be spending more money than they perhaps would want to because Rubio was considered such a safe bet. Of course, Nicole, Florida has really become trended more red than purple as it has been in previous cycles. Really, with 2016 and Trump's win then, it has moved towards the Republican column and has been less of that sort of swing state. So she still has a significant climb to win in the general election, especially when this with perhaps the Republican trend to more wins in November because of the economy, because of inflation and other national trends and issues that are propelling certain Republican candidates in these midterm races.
And then lastly, you touched on the former president briefly. I mean, what are the political implications of today's races for him, especially given some of the legal challenges he's facing right now?
Yeah, I did speak with a source close to Trump, an advisor close to Trump just today, who believes that the investigations, and specifically the FBI search of his Mar-a-Lago estate just here in Florida, in Palm Beach County, that actually has emboldened him to potentially run and make another bid for the White House in 2024. He is someone who has been raising a lot of money since the FBI searched his property. And to him, he's also been fueled by this. That he's angry, according to the source, because of it. But he's also, again, boosted by the fact that he's received a lot of Republican support for a potential 2024 bid. But again, there are some also, we were talking to some insiders in the Republican Party who have this sort of wait and see approach to see how these investigations play out for former President Donald Trump.
All right, Finn Gomez, thanks so much for joining us from Florida tonight.
Thanks, Nicole.
The U.S. Embassy in Ukraine is urging American citizens to once again flee the country. The security alert issued on Monday comes as Russia steps up efforts to launch strikes against Ukraine's civilian infrastructure. That's according to findings from the U.S. intelligence community declassified Monday. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is approaching the 6-month mark on Wednesday. The former head of security at Twitter has filed multiple whistleblower complaints alleging the platform failed to protect user data and lied about security protocols. Peter Mudge Zatko sent the disclosure to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Department of Justice last month. In the filings obtained by CBS News, he claims Twitter violated an FTC settlement by falsely claiming it had a strong security plan. Zatko also highlighted what he called a deliberate ignorance in the identification and handling of millions of fake spam accounts. I spoke to Zatko's attorney, John Ty, this afternoon, who said the complaints will help the average American understand how their online information is stored. Here's part of our conversation. What do you tell the average user out there who may be hearing this story or reading your client's complaint and is concerned about their own security?
Well, they should be. This hopefully will be an opportunity for more regular users to learn how their data is handled, some of the risks of exploitation by foreign agents or bad actors, and to help Americans understand, how we can keep these companies accountable to the kind of promises that they're making.
Several congressional committees are looking into Zatko's claims, and his lawyer has acknowledged that some of them have been briefed. A spokesperson for the Senate Intelligence Committee says the panel is taking the matter seriously. Twitter responded to the filings, saying, quote, security and privacy have long been top company-wide priorities at Twitter. Zatko now appears to be opportunistically seeking to inflict harm on Twitter, its customers, and its shareholders. Polls in Florida and New York are set to close soon. We take you to both states to ask our insiders about the issues and candidates that are driving the narratives ahead of November. You're streaming CBS News.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Norah O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging winds.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Nicole Kelly, and here's a look at some of our top stories. 2 men have been found guilty of conspiring to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Adam Fox and Barry Croft Jr. were also found guilty of attempting to obtain a weapon of mass destruction. The 2 were part of a group of 6 accused of targeting Whitmer in 2020. Plus, the CDC says routine cleaning and hand washing can prevent the spread of monkeypox in schools. The agency says the risk of infection in American children and adolescents is extremely low. Out of the more than 1,500 cases that have been reported nationwide, only 17 cases have been found in children under 15 years old. And primary elections are being held in 3 states today. Natalie Brand has more on the races in Florida, New York, and Oklahoma.
As voters and candidates head to the polls in Florida, Democratic gubernatorial hopefuls say the stakes couldn't be higher.
The entire country is going to be watching, all eyes on Florida.
This election will determine who gets to take on Ron DeSantis.
Former Republican Florida governor turned Democratic Congressman Charlie Crist and State Agricultural Commissioner Nikki Fried are considered the frontrunners in a primary race that will determine who takes on incumbent Governor Ron DeSantis. He's running unopposed on the GOP side. Considered a top Republican contender for the 2024 presidential race, DeSantis has pushed education as a major issue in recent local and national appearances.
Floridians want our school system to be about educating kids, not indoctrinating kids.
While his Democratic rivals have made abortion rights a key issue heading into November.
A woman's right to choose is on the ballot.
We've got strength not only in younger votes, but of course women vote.
In New York, redistricting has pitted 2 top Democrats and longtime congressional colleagues against each other.
Current House Oversight Committee Chairwoman Carolyn Maloney is in a contentious fight with Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler, both first elected to Congress 4 decades ago.
I want to go back to Congress.
It's very unfortunate that we're going to lose one committee chairman.
In Red, Oklahoma, voters will move closer to replacing retiring U.S. Senator James Inhofe. For the Republicans, it's Congressman Markwayne Mullin versus former State House Speaker T.W. Shannon. The winner faces Democratic ex-Congresswoman Kendra Horn in November. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
For more on the primaries in New York and Florida, Marcia Kramer and Jim DeFede join us now. Marcia is the chief political correspondent for CBS New York, and Jim is an investigative reporter for our CBS station in Miami. Thanks so much to both of you for joining us. Marcia, I want to start off with you. This is the second set of primaries in New York this summer because of a court's ruling. How do voters feel about that, and how is turnout in today's races?
Well, I don't know what the turnout is right now, but I can tell you that voters seem to have been voting with their feet because the early voting numbers were really down. They were down about 20,000 votes from what happened in June. There's also been a large number of absentee ballots in some of the key areas where there's key contests. So it could mean that some of these key elections might not even be called tonight because, for example, in Manhattan, where there are 2 hot races, there's 54,000 absentee ballots. That could be the difference between a call tonight and not calling it tonight.
Jim, 2 Democrats are facing off in the gubernatorial primary today. How might they match up against Governor Ron DeSantis in the general?
Yeah, that's the interesting question. It's almost like tonight, whoever wins, be careful what you wish for, because you come out of this election and have to run a sprint of less than 80 days to run against Ron DeSantis, who has more than $130 million in the bank. That is, he is going to just do a massive air war against whichever Democrat comes out of this race. We're already beginning to see it. So it's going to be an uphill climb. DeSantis' popularity in the state, he is popular. He's certainly polarizing, but he's also popular among certain groups of people. And the confidence that he shows, you can tell because he's been spending the last couple of weeks traveling to Arizona and Pennsylvania to campaign for other candidates. He's so confident about what he's going to be able to do here in Florida.
And Marcia, I know there's a lot of attention on the races throughout the city, but how much is abortion a driving issue for voters in the primary, particularly upstate?
Well, you know, it's really interesting that you asked that question because there's a special election upstate to replace Antonio Delgado in the 19th Congressional District, who became lieutenant governor. Abortion is playing a big role. The Democrat, obviously, is trying to ride that to victory, but the Republican, Mark Molinero, is trying to forget about social issues, not mention them, and try to talk about pocketbook and public safety issues. And right now, the polls make it seem like he's ahead.
And Jim, let's turn to the Senate race in Florida. Val Demings is vying against 3 challengers to take on incumbent Senator Marco Rubio in November, but it seems like the general election has already started between these two.
No, it certainly has. I don't think Val Demings has spent a second worrying about or campaigning against any of her opponents. She will be the nominee in the Democratic side, and she has already been focused for weeks on attacking Marco Rubio. And what's fascinating in this race is that normally the incumbent, especially with the backing of the National Republican Party, you would expect them to have all the money. In fact, it's just the opposite. Val Demings has done a masterful job of fundraising, and as a result, Marco Rubio is actually the underdog. Now, there has been some recent polling that suggests Val Demings is ahead. I will caution you, I don't even think Val Demings people believe in those polls. But both sides are using it to raise money for their respective campaigns. Marco Rubio by saying, look, he's in serious trouble, he needs your donations right away. And Val Demings is using it as a way of saying, I am viable, don't write off Florida. As much as people think that Florida is now a red state, don't write me off. I can beat Marco Rubio.
Jim DeFede, Marcia Kramer, thanks so much for your political expertise and for joining us tonight. President Biden is expected to make an announcement tomorrow on the potential cancellation of federal student debt. Sources say the White House is leaning toward the cancellation of up to $10,000 in student loans per borrower. The debt forgiveness would reportedly only apply to students who earn less than $125,000 a year. A moratorium on federal education debt payments is set to expire at the end of the month. The pause on student payments began in March of 2020 and has been extended 4 times. The Pentagon is denying D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser's second request for the National Guard's help with an influx of migrants from Texas and Arizona. The Justice Department says the National Guard is not trained to properly deal with the situation. Thousands of migrants have been bused to D.C. and hundreds to New York. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says he wants the rest of the nation to understand the chaos Texas and Arizona deal with. The D.C. governor has called the busing of migrants, quote, politically motivated. There's a few hours left before polls close in New York. We'll talk with a former head of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee about those races and what he makes of a move the current DCCC chairman, Sean Patrick Maloney, made. You are streaming Red and Blue.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Norah O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before. That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News.
What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
when weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging winds.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me!
We got it. We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
New York voters are heading to the polls for key primary races across the state. The races today come after a court struck down the redistricting map drawn by New York Democrats for gerrymandering earlier this year. The court-drawn map is leading to veteran incumbents facing each other in primaries and some more competitive races. For more on this, we are joined by former New York Congressman Steve Israel. He is also the former chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Thanks so much, Congressman, for being with us.
Nicole, thanks for having me on.
I just want to ask you about this whole redistricting situation. Certainly angered a lot of people on all sides. As you know, Democrats more or less had an advantage until the court struck down their map for gerrymandering. And then we saw this special master brought in to redraw the lines. I mean, ultimately, are Democrats to blame for this redistricting situation?
Well, look, both parties try and exploit whatever advantage they have to produce maps that will favor incumbents of those parties. When I was the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, I did it. The Republican chair of the campaign committee does it. This is why we need to just end partisanship in drawing lines. What happened in New York really was extraordinary, however. We had maps that we Democrats thought would be a slam dunk. And as a result of the court decision, now Democrats are just getting slammed by that map. Two popular incumbents pitted against one another in Manhattan. One popular incumbent having to have moved from Westchester to Brooklyn. The chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee facing a primary in his district. So it has been very eventful in New York politics.
I mean, how do you fix this going forward?
Well, today, as you know, will be the fix. After months of uncertainty, we have these tightly fought primaries, and that will at least settle, the matter of who's running for Congress, who has the advantage of incumbency. But I have to say, long term, and I say this as somebody who chaired the political committee for the Democrats, the partisan use of redistricting, letting politicians decide who their constituents will be, rather than having constituents decide who their elected officials will be, does a disservice to democracy. It's a bad idea. And fundamentally, what we need is reform that draws districts not based on partisan motive, but just based on the number of people who live in that district. That would be one of the most important things we can do to restore and rebuild democracy in this country and take politics and partisanship out of Congress.
As you mentioned, you're a former chairman. The current chairman, Sean Patrick Maloney, made this decision to run in the newly redrawn 17th district, which more or less forced the incumbent there, Molinero Jones, to either primary him or run in a different district. Do you think Maloney handled that situation in the best way?
Politics is about survival. It is about trying to apply your principles and ideologies to fix problems. But the only way you can do that is to get reelected. And so I'm not surprised by what Sean Patrick Maloney did, and nor am I surprised by what Congressman Jones did. He decided that he could compete more effectively in a different district, moved to Brooklyn. Turns out that primary is probably closer than anybody originally anticipated. And we will know shortly, who has won the primary that Sean Patrick Maloney finds himself in the excerpts of New York, north of New York City, and who wins the primary in Brooklyn that Congressman Molinero Jones now finds himself in.
Yeah, and as you referenced, New York Congressman Jerry Nadler is facing Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney in a rare incumbent versus incumbent primary. I'm sure you know both of these individuals very well. How difficult is this one for you to watch?
This is a clash of the progressive titans, Congressman Nadler, Congresswoman Maloney, both senior members of the New York delegation, both committee chairs, both bring seniority and influence and clout for New York to Washington, D.C., and to watch this fight, and it has grown quite bitter, actually, it's hard to watch. It's like, having two favorite sports teams. Well, right now the Mets are playing the Yankees. This is the political equivalent.
And speaking, I guess, of what will likely be the World Series in terms of the general election coming up this November, how do you see Democrats' chances in terms of potentially holding on to Congress?
The past several weeks has seen an improved environment for Democrats. The Roe versus Wade decision by the Supreme Court has affected the dynamic. The passage of the Inflation Reduction Act has improved the dynamic. The question is this, Nicole. Is this the eye of the storm? And will those gray clouds and heavy winds come back in October and early November? Or does this represent a more permanent change for the better for Democrats? We're not going to know that until things begin to crystallize with independent voters and base voters. And that usually happens in the middle of October in a midterm election.
All right. Former Congressman Steve Israel, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Nicole.
We're going to take a quick break, but now is a good time to remind you to stay up to date. You can download our CBS News app. You can catch live local coverage from across the country from all of our CBS stations. Stay with us. You're streaming CBS News.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Norah O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News.
What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging winds.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me?
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
NASA has unveiled new images of Jupiter captured by the James Webb Space Telescope. In the photos, Jupiter's famous red spot, a storm big enough to engulf Earth, appears white. Astronomy experts say the white spots and streaks seen are likely high-altitude cloud tops from condensed convective storms. In the wide-view photo, viewers can faintly see the planet's 4 rings and 2 of its moons. Well, that does it for us today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And a reminder, if you want to watch previous episodes of the program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website. Just head to cbsnews.com/red and blue.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
You ready? A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I'm Norah O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News.
What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
Want to go someplace new? Yeah, you do.
See something new.
Learn something new.
Meet someone new. Nate B in the house.
There's always something new under the sun.
CBS Mornings, weekdays.
When weather is about to get extreme.
We're talking about hail, we're talking about tornadoes, damaging winds.
Every second counts.
Let's now take a look at what that really means to you.
That's why CBS News and the Weather Channel have come together to bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
We can show you what it's going to look like when the storms come through.
You'll see what will happen, where it will happen, before it does. Feel the forecast on CBS News. Time to get prepared.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
CBS News Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley on CBS.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
Yeah. We found it.
You're kidding me?
We got it.
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
American voters are making big decisions about our nation. As the midterm elections grow closer, the CBS News political team brings understanding of what's at stake. America Decides, streaming tonight at 9 on the CBS News app.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It's gonna be big!
The metaverse, the virtual world that's become a cryptocurrency casino.
It's like buying property on Mars.
Do they get an actual picture of this? No, it's a digital copy. Why would they pay for that?
Making millionaires almost overnight.
We made more than $1 million in crypto last year.
I have no idea how much money I have made over the past year. That's like, wow.
Big rewards.
There's gold in them, there hills, as they say.
Bigger risks.
The market's down, but it's going to bounce back. It's crypto.
Is it a gold rush or fool's gold?
It's our metaverse, our story. Peace out, y'all.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Stream now.
We are so excited, we just can't hide it.
Let's do it!
Let's go! Drew Barrymore.
Hi, guys.
Miss Lopez and Mr. Maluma are Reggie. What your name is?
Kristen Bell, baby.
It's the Fonz. Wow.
His name is Henry.
I know.
It's all right.
One question. How often do you consume cannabis? Full frontal male.
What did Tony say?
This is why I love Black TV.
CBS mornings are, well, everything your morning should be.
Is this a date or are we just friends?
Here we are, your favorite morning people.
CBS mornings.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Piper. Thanks for joining us. Here's a look at the top stories we're following right now. President Biden is set to announce a major plan to forgive student loan debt. We'll have the latest from the White House. A disaster declaration is issued in Texas after floods submerged roads, cars, and homes, where the storms are now headed.